thank you all for taking time out of your day to attend our first workshop of our newly launched series called Keys to Your Future. Keys to Your Future is a Key Club workshop series that we'll kind of dive into later today. And, this is something new that we plan to have throughout the whole year. So without further ado, I did want to get into some of the ground rules today for our presentation. So just keep in mind to, mute your microphone for the duration of the workshop. And definitely this workshop will be interactive. Definitely we want to make sure that you guys are engaging with the material as well. This material definitely I think is important for you all, especially the topic of financial literacy, which we'll be going into today. But if you do have any questions, you can either write it in the chat or you can use the raise your hand option. And when you have the raise your hand option, our moderator, Angela, who happens to also be our Florida District Secretary, will call on your name and then you can unmute your mic to ask any questions you may have. And of course, sit back and relax. Definitely take notes if you like. And we just really hope that this workshop series will be a great way to introduce you to the many topics of financial preparedness and professional development that are helpful for your future. So without further ado, I will introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Murtaza Hussain, and I'm your Florida District Treasurer. Just a bit background about myself. I've lived in South Florida all my life. I was born here in the deep and hot sun. So I like to escape from that in the winter by going skiing. As you can see, that's me skiing up in Vermont last winter. And more background about my teaching experience with financial literacy and professional development comes from my involvement with foster care communities. One prominent foster care village that I've worked with is SOS Children's Village in Coconut Creek. You may have SOS Children's Village near some of your cities as well, but that's some background about myself. So without further ado, what is Keys to Your Future? So Keys to Your Future is a year-long workshop series on financial literacy and professional development. We plan to present a workshop on a key topic every single month. So as you saw from the email today and a couple of days ago, this workshop will be called Key Number 1, and every single workshop coming forward will be Key Number 2, Key Number 3, and hopefully these keys will unlock some concepts in your life that will definitely be beneficial for you in the future. So to give you additional color on what topics we want to present throughout the year, we plan to present topics such as essentials of budgeting and savings, which is in fact the topic that we'll actually dive into today. Topics such as consumer protection, job searching, resume building, interview preparation and public speaking, and many more per your request. We really hope that this workshop series will introduce you to these topics and sort of push you to research some of these essential topics so that you can gain additional color for your future. And from the registration form, I really appreciate all of you for actually giving us ideas of some topics that you would like to see in the future. So we definitely look forward to accrediting to your needs. And without further ado, let's dive into what the topic of today's workshop will be. So what's today's workshop? Today's workshop is Key Number 1, Understanding Financial Fitness. So I did want to give some sort of broad overview on what we'll be talking about today throughout this whole presentation. So first and foremost, we'll be talking about personal finances, planning for your future. We'll introduce the topics of savings, budgeting. Within budgeting, we'll talk about wants and needs, as well as different types of expenses, such as fixed expenses, variable expenses, and periodic expenses. So all these topics will fall under the umbrella of financial fitness. So before we talk about finances, our whole topic is about financial fitness. So I know the word financial fitness may not seem familiar, but definitely the word fitness is. So what does it mean to be fit? There are many different types of fitness, so let's consider them. There is physical fitness. You work out, you go on a run, you do yoga at home, or you do home exercises. There's emotional fitness, where there are different types of methods such as meditation, art therapy, sharing your feelings or relaying your stress to your friends and family. There's intellectual fitness. You expand your intellectual capacity and become more intellectually curious, maybe by following the news or reading books and articles. There's social fitness. You hang out with your friends, you talk over the phone or Zoom like we are now, maybe with your relatives or with your classmates. And then there's also spiritual fitness. You connect to your religion, or you become more faithful and positive towards your goals, developing a more positive mindset towards what you want to achieve in life. So, that being said, all these types of fitness, what do all of these types of fitness have in common? So fitness is definitely good for you and beneficial for you, but it's not just a one-time thing. So the main qualities about fitness is that consistency is key. In order to be the healthiest you can, it has to become a habit. You need to do it the right way. If you were to work out in a gym, you need to make sure that you are performing exercises that are at the right angle, making sure that you're doing it the right way so that no damage is done. And of course, with fitness, the more work you put in, the better the result. There's always a positive correlation with the work ethic you put in and the outcomes that comes in fitness. And that comes with anything, physical fitness, intellectual fitness, and all the other fitnesses that we dived into just in the previous slide. So that being said, what is financial fitness? So financial fitness is incorporating essential financial habits in your daily lives in order to maintain your personal finances. All right, so that being said, financial fitness is really just making it a habit in your life to incorporate some really essential topics and methods and disciplines in order to maintain your personal finances. So many of you may not know what exactly the term personal finances is. I'm sure all of you have a general idea, but I did want to give you a more specific definition in case you're taking notes or in case you just want to gain additional color on what that means. So personal fitness is the practice of determining and managing a person's financial needs and goals for the future. So in more simpler terms, personal finance is really just managing your money to make sure that you're secure for the future and that you fit your needs and your goals. So what are needs, what are goals? We'll definitely dive into what needs are, but of course, you all may know that when you transition into independency and you start making money for yourself, there are many different things that you need to now be on top of yourself because you are now making your own money, and you become more fiscally responsible. So that being said, just like physical fitness, in order to maintain your financial fitness, keeping your personal finances in healthy condition requires planning and continually working towards your goals. So why would it be important to determine your financial needs for the future? So this is going to be more of an open-ended question. So I would love to see any responses that you may have in the chat. So again, why would it be important to determine your financial needs for the future? I look forward to seeing some of the responses you may have. Let me open the chat. And everyone feel free to, give any responses. There's no right or wrong answer here, but definitely let me know what you guys think. You can be broad or specific. All right, seeing responses. Sabrina and Simran, great answers. So you don't buy things you can afford, causing lots of debt, right? Taxes, budgets, debt, etc. Okay, you all are on the right track. Helps determine your financial goals, whether they're long-term or short-term. Wow, okay. I like how you mentioned long-term and short-term. That'll be very very important in this lesson today. Helps determine your financial goals. Awesome. So these are all really great responses. You all are actually on the right track. So definitely, there are many answers to this question, but a more general and more basic answers to all these questions that really fit under everything you guys talked about in the chat is really just to have enough money to get what you need or want in life. That's why it's really important to determine what your financial needs are. And of course, it's very important to be able to take care of yourself, especially when you transition to independency during college and after college, and eventually later in life, your family. So that's really important. And moreover, it's important to determine your financial needs so you have enough money to get what you need or want in life, but also to make sure that you don't give up things that you do want because you don't have enough money. So that being said, let's dive into a hypothetical right now, okay? So we talked about how having personal finances and determining your needs is very important. So now let's try to apply it into the real world real quick. So imagine you're taking a trip across the country. What do you need to plan in advance? How would you know how much money to bring? And how would you handle that money safely so you can pay for what you need along the way? So let's start answering the first question. What do you need to plan in advance? What are some of your responses? And these, of course, could be very general. Think about, you're taking a road trip all the way down to the Keys, or all the way up to Tallahassee, or even outside the state. If you're going on a road trip, what do you need to plan in advance? How much you need to spend, right? Plan for an emergency. Okay, Yasmin, I like how you mentioned emergencies. That'll be a very important topic that we'll talk about. Are you going to pay for travel costs? Correct. Transportation, cost of food and gas. Okay. Different places you'll be stopping. Perfect. Yeah, so you guys are all on the right track. So definitely, there are many different answers to this question as well. Clothes you'll need, where you'll go, where you'll stay, what you'll see, length of the trip, transportation. In fact, I think you all mentioned this in the chat, so I love your collaborative effort right there. So now let's dive into the second question. How would you know how much money to bring? What are some things that you're going to keep in mind? What methods are you going to employ? Planning ahead, where we'll stop, based on the cost of food, gas, if places accept cash or credit. Okay, that's really insightful. So really a lot of calculations, a lot of things along those lines. Yeah, perfect. So of course, you really just add up the cost of activities, food, places to stay, have some extra money for emergencies. I know someone mentioned emergencies as well. So yeah, these are really basic questions, and definitely all your responses are on the right track. You definitely need to make sure that you calculate in foresight what you need to spend your money on if you were to go on a road trip, and how much money to bring. And lastly, this is more of just a straightforward question. How would you handle that money safely so that you can pay for what you need along the way? Look on the internet, calculate how much money you need based on the hotels and gas, and do the math. Perfect, yeah. All right, yeah. So how would you handle that money safely? Of course, you need to make sure that you keep your money in a safe place and you just become careful about spending. So now that we applied our sort of, understanding of finances and determining our needs for the future in a short-term perspective, with this, taking a trip across the journey, we can really relate this to the long term in the real world. While that journey is a road trip is a short-term journey, in fact, our whole lives is a journey. So in order to have a secure future, people really need to set goals, plan wisely, manage carefully, and prepare for emergencies. So really every single thing that you all applied to a short-term trip, such as a road trip, really those methods need to be a part of your consistent day-to-day life throughout your whole life. So that being said, it's very, very important that you consider all the different types of aspects of personal finance that you need to incorporate in your life, which we'll definitely dive into shortly. So, since it makes sense to consider setting goals, planning wisely, and managing carefully in short-term situations, it is that much more important for long-term plans and goals. So that being said, personal finance is not just about making money, but it's about planning and managing funds to achieve both short-term and long-term goals. And one point I would really like to bring out is that personal financial skills are necessary for all people, no matter how much money you make. It is a very, it's a misconception that the more money you have, the less you need to manage. And really that's really, up to subject, that's really subjective. But we're going to see a video today on how people who do make a lot of money, they can actually end up in financial turmoil. So that being said, let's watch a video on how NFL players who become very wealthy at a young age due to high salary contracts are actually at a risk of financial turmoil due to a lack of understanding of the essentials of personal finance.
Is it possible to spend $110 million in a decade?
It's so hard to believe that people would go broke. How does it happen?
Many athletes are at a high risk of going bankrupt.
When the first big article hit in Sports Illustrated talking about athletes going broke, and my having witnessed friends live that out, it became an inspiration to really attack this problem and build something that could be all about what to do with the excess money that we earn as athletes.
So all of a sudden, when markets pull back, we now go down to how much? 900,000.
Personal Finance Bootcamp, it's in its second year. We've doubled the attendance since last year. We only started with 20 this year. We're over 40 people. We're basically here to teach the guys, look, with the time value of money, it's actually an amazing opportunity to get all these cash flows early in life, get guys to think about their finances beyond this year, the next 5 years, really look at it over a lifespan. You have the opportunity to set up generations of your family. One of the biggest trappings for professional athletes is the fact that our pay is public knowledge. With that comes expectations not only for a lot of charity to newfound friends and family, but also for the lifestyle that you're expected to live. I think a lot of us who have played this game have watched close friends, families be torn apart by poor financial decisions. What we want to do here by including significant others is take this potential tension and turn it into an asset. We just think it's a much better potential for family sustainability and a happy long-term outlook. There's a lot of bad information tossed around the locker room, and this is a place for them to receive unbiased information that they can go back to the locker room and combat that information to help not only themselves but the teammates make better long-term planning decisions.
Is it possible?
All right, so let's evaluate. What are some major points that are brought up in this video? So feel free to take a minute to write some of the points that you learned from that video into the chat, and I'll definitely outline that shortly. So some of the points that we learned from that video was that even people who make a lot of money can make mistakes and end up in financial trouble. So that being said, learning about personal finances early can help prevent problems later in life. And it is not enough to make money. You really do need to know how to manage it. So in all, we really hope that this presentation and this series itself will show you how to be financially healthy. So without further ado, when it comes to being financially healthy, the number one thing that we must employ in our lives is the topic of savings. So this is going to be one of the first major deep dives that we're going to do, and that is savings. So tying back to the topic of understanding financial fitness, just like those athletes, personal finance is like personal fitness. Keeping your finances in healthy condition requires planning and continually working towards your goals. Today, we're going to look at how savings is like a diet. You know, there's always a limit to everything you buy or eat, and a portion that you have to save for later, which is similar to, you know, leaving a snack for later. You don't want to eat too much junk food in one day. So that can really, I guess, serve as a metaphor for how savings can be employed in your life. Just like as if you're going towards a fitness goal, personal finance always has a financial goal as well. So here's a bit of an overview of savings. So before we kind of deep dive into some of the specifics of savings, such as the importance, the consequences of not saving, I sort of want to ask you all, you know, what was the largest you've ever made with your own money? Either these are from allowances or gifts you've made or gifts you've received. You know, what was the largest you've ever made with your own money? And think about, you know, how did you get enough money to save it? And when you did want to save up money to get something, did you have any setbacks in between? So these are all questions that you all should probably keep in mind, especially when it comes to an initial foundation of savings. When was the first time that you ever made your own money? Did you have enough money to save it? And I particularly want to put attention to, did you have any setbacks? Oh, Roy, that's awesome. $106 from birthday money, awesome. So specifically, I'd love to see many of you share, you know, what setbacks you may have had with savings. Or if you didn't have any setbacks at all, that's great. So building off of these questions, you know, setbacks could be that if you're, you know, saving up money to get something else, you might have had some necessities that came in between. Like Madeline said, need to pay for necessities like gasoline for your car, especially if you're driving. So yeah, that being said, keeping all these questions in mind, it really results to making sure that savings is a key aspect of your life in making sure that you're keeping your financial health in check. So that being said, let's talk about the importance of savings. Here are some general questions. You know, why do people want to spend money? Pay attention to the word want, all right? Why do people want to spend money? And what do people need to spend money on? So there are many answers to these questions. People want to spend money so that, you know, they basically can buy what they really want. In our economy, scarcity is a huge thing. We have unlimited wants, but we really do have limited resources, limited income. So, you know, if you buy everything you want, you will likely have no money left. And of course, like that applies for everyone, regardless of how much money you make. So it's really important to recognize the concept of wants and what people need to spend money on. So let's go in a more definition perspective. What do you think it means to save? And think a little bit more specific. What does it mean to save? savings for necessities such as food or emergencies, to not only save money, but have a plan of how much you'll save over a period of time, to have goals. All right, yeah, Roy, really insightful. To build up a certain amount of money for circumstances that may arrive, perfect. Work for something you need or want, or plan it. Very insightful, Sabrina. Yeah, so you all are on the right track. So really what it means to save is setting aside a portion of current income for future use. So I know it's very conventional knowledge that savings is important, but I really did want to, bring this to your minds about the topic of savings, because although most people know that they should save, many people find it very difficult to do. And I know that's really, I know that's really easy to say that, when you have money, you just save it aside, but especially with certain circumstances that appear in your life, saving money can be a sort of a hassle and difficulty and obstacle in your life. So that being said, let's talk about the difficulties in savings. And I'd love to see your responses on, why do you think saving money is difficult? What do you think are some circumstances people go through that just don't allow them to save? All right, because people always want something, paying bills or such, accidents like car accident. Oh, I see. So maybe some periodic expenses come through your life, temptations, living costs. Yeah, these are all correct. So saving money is difficult because people want more than they can afford. People think about what they want now and they don't think about their future needs. So that being said, why is savings necessary? And many of you guys have actually answered this in your own responses. People need to save money to pay for big ticket items that are, especially now in our day and age, are pretty essential for your day-to-day life, especially if you're working, such as a car or a refrigerator. But it's also necessary to save because it can cover, future maybe medical expenses or even unexpected accidents or emergencies. So those are some of the difficulties that, saving money can sort of come forward in front of people. But what are some consequences of not saving? One question that appears is that if people don't save, how do they pay for their wants or needs, such as outstanding bills? So sort of think about it in a real life perspective. Let's say you had to pay your bills, but you had no money left. What will you do? What options do you have available in order to pay for your bills, even if you don't have enough money? You can borrow money, getting a loan. Yeah, perfect. So that's the number one thing. People often choose to borrow money to pay for their wants or even their needs. So that being said, if you borrow money, does it come for free? Do you think there are any consequences? So just to reiterate, borrowing money, what main consequence does borrowing money have? Yep, a couple of you guys got it. So yeah, everything has a cost, even if it isn't financial. So this especially applies to borrowing money. And that consequence is the topic of interest. If you borrow money, you must pay interest. So it seems like many of you guys know what interest is, but for those who do not know what interest is the payment for the use of money, a fee paid to use someone else's money, or money earned from allowing someone else to use your money. So interest can be both positive and negative. If you borrow money, interest is basically additional basically an additional amount that you would have to pay for borrowing money. So for example, if you took a loan for $1,000 and you have to pay it off in a month, if you don't pay it, if you do, recap, if you take a loan for $1,000, you'll most likely have an interest rate based off of that. So maybe that interest rate is 5%, 10%. So that means you're not really giving back the $1,000 that you borrowed. You'll be giving back a greater amount. So, that sort of begs the question, why is paying interest sort of a bad thing? And that is because paying interest can be consequential, because since many can get stuck in the loop of paying interest forever. So you may be wondering, how does that work? How do some people, kind of get stuck in the loop of paying interest forever? So think about it. If you have to manage your needs and your wants, such as your rent, paying your bills, but at the same time try to pay off your loan that you borrowed the previous month, you may not be able to pay it right away. So of course there's consequences with not paying it right away. And what ends up happening is that your loan amount increases over time. So let's say you have to pay you borrowed 1,000, you have to pay 100, you have to pay back 1,100. If you couldn't pay back that 1,100, you're gonna have to now pay 1,150 the following month. And it sort of builds off over and over. And especially when you're in tight circumstances, such as balancing your needs and wants, this could be a problem. So one main factor that influences that is influenced by interest rates is the concept of credit scores. So credit scores are basically a grade that you have towards your whole financial circumstances. So I really urge you all to sort of note down credit scores, since it could be a bit of a complex topic. But of course, today I do want to make sure I set the foundations of financial fitness, such as savings and budgeting. But I really urge you guys and suggest that you do note down credit scores and sort of look up what credit scores are, how they can help you, what are some of the effects paying interest can do from your credit scores. So definitely, I'll definitely recommend that you do research what credit scores are. So we've talked about the importance of savings, and we've also talked about some of the consequences of not saving. But now that sort of you may be wondering, you told me that, but how can I save? So first and foremost, when it comes to saving does come with a discipline. Just like a workout routine needs discipline, so does saving money in your everyday financial habits require discipline. So one primary method of saving money is a concept called pay yourself first, PYF. So what is paying yourself first? It really is setting aside money for savings prior to paying monthly expenses. So what does that mean? When you get a monthly paycheck of whatever many dollars, before you even touch that money to spend it on your expenses, you inherently set it aside. You inherently set that money aside for savings. And people who only save what's left over from their paycheck at the end of the month never save. So it might be an idea in your head that I got this paycheck, let me just pay off all my expenses first. What may end up happening is that you don't have any savings, or if you do, or if you have a small amount of savings, you don't really save it. You sort of have the urge to spend it because you have remaining money left. So it is really, really important that you employ the method of pay yourself first, especially when you get your first paycheck. Or many of you guys may have already started working and may have already started doing this. But if you haven't, I really recommend that you employ the method of pay yourself first. So remember, wants are unlimited, but income is limited. So I mentioned you save money, you set aside money once you get your paycheck. But what are some methods that you can use to make sure that you're setting aside a good amount of money and a sufficient amount of money so that you have, one, a good amount of savings in your account in a long-term period, and two, have enough money after savings to pay off your expenses. So it is essential to set a savings goal in advance. Paying yourself first is in fact the first bill that should be paid when the paycheck arrives. So that being said, many experts agree that for young people, saving 10 to 15% of their income is a good goal, or the 50-30-20 rule. So if you guys are sort of confused on what the 50-30-20 rule is, that is basically setting aside 50% of your paycheck or your monthly income towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% towards your savings. And in fact, one way people automatically save is through creating a savings account. So I would also recommend that you note down savings account and sort of do some research online on what the procedure is in creating a savings account and how a savings account can actually benefit your financial future. But to build off of what I said, we talked about how you can save and how paying yourself first is a method you can employ. But a method within that to make sure that you're on top of yourself with savings is incorporating the 10 or the 15% rule of saving your income before you even touch your bills, such as your electricity bill, your rent, or anything like that. Or you can follow the 50-30-20 rule, which shows much more of a balance in your budget, which is 50% into needs, 30% into wants, and 20% into savings. And definitely one major way to do that is through a savings account. So now that we've talked about the importance of savings, the consequences of not savings, and the ways we can save, I would like to finish off this topic of savings by introducing to you the concept of emergency funds. Now, this may seem very foreign to you all. Many of you guys may not know what emergency funds are exactly, but they can be an effective way of securing your future through this saving discipline. So without further ado, I will play this video. It's a quick video, just like the last one. But yeah.
Life is full of surprises, but you can be better prepared to handle them by building an emergency fund. Think of it as your financial safety net, a reliable source of money when you need it, so you don't have to resort to credit cards and loans. It's part of any good financial plan. Here are 3 things to know about an emergency fund. 1, how much to save. We suggest saving at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses. It may take time to get there, and that's okay. The important thing is to start today with what you can afford, and then build your way up to 5% of your paycheck. A helpful tip is to take advantage of automatic deposits, which help you put away a little bit each pay period without even thinking about it. 2, where to keep your money. To avoid the temptation of tapping into your emergency fund for day-to-day expenses, we suggest keeping your money in a separate account. Consider a savings or money market account, so you have an easy way to access your cash when you need it, while you earn some interest in the meantime. 3, what to use it for. Only use your emergency fund for true emergencies, like health expenses, critical home and auto repairs, or paying essential expenses after a job loss. If you do have an emergency, be sure to replenish the money you use, so it will be there for next time. Life happens, but an emergency fund can help you weather the unexpected and turn a potential financial catastrophe into an inconvenience. Together, we can help you build a strong financial foundation so you're more prepared to face life's unknowns.
All right. So just to recap, I do want to add some additional clarification on what an emergency fund actually is. So how is an emergency fund different from saving up from a large purchase? So you have to keep in mind that if you were to set up an emergency fund is only for emergencies. You should always keep an emergency fund, even if there's nothing you want to purchase. So I do want to clarify. Many of you guys may be thinking that an emergency fund is your savings account. That may not really be the case. As you saw from that video, there's 3 tabs of the bank account that one person had. One was a checking account, which is what you use to pay for your expenses, a savings account, and a emergency fund. So as I mentioned before, you can employ the 10% rule or the 15% rule into savings. So within those percentages, you can actually use some of that into your emergency fund. So for example, you can put 10% into your savings and 5% into your emergency fund. But emergency funds are something not everyone does, but I did want to keep that in your mind in case that's something that you're interested in doing. And I definitely recommend that you do, because emergencies can come out of nowhere in any point of your lives. So you do want to make sure that you do employ long-term planning in regard to that. So as we wrap up that portion of our session in regard to savings, I did want to pay forward some mobile savings apps that you guys can install on your phones or on your whatever devices that you use. I know savings can be something that requires a bit more organization and structure in your life, especially since everyone during this time is very busy with school, work. But through these apps, these can probably help you become more disciplined about saving. So feel free to take a picture of this slide. I know some of these apps, based on my online research and based on some of the testimonials from a couple of friends that use these apps, these apps can help you save and also build some of your savings, such as Acorns and Mint and Digit. So that being said, we talked about savings. So now let's talk about how you can manage your savings. So again, just to recap, personal finance is just like personal fitness. Keeping your finances in healthy conditions, such as implementing savings in your life, requires planning and continually working towards your goals. But now we're going to look at budgeting and how a budget is like a workout plan and how it keeps you on track. So without further ado, we're going to watch a quick video on budgeting to introduce you to the topic, and then we'll do a deep dive into all the aspects.
More items on your to-do list than hours in the day? If you're in college, you know exactly what we're talking about. But there's one thing you should never be too busy to do, and that is taking time to make a budget. A budget is a financial plan that will help you make smart spending choices today while preparing for tomorrow. Budgeting will help you achieve your goals and prepare you for unexpected bumps in the road. So what goes into making a budget? First, you'll need to track your income and expenses for a particular period of time, such as a month. You can use pen and paper, a spreadsheet, or a budgeting app. After that, making your budget comes down to a simple equation: what you earn minus what you spend. To determine your income, include items such as wages earned at work, allowances from family, and student financial aid such as grants or scholarships. To determine your expenses, include items such as tuition, books, rent, credit card payments, and car payments. Then simply subtract your expenses from your income. Are your earnings greater than your spending? If so, you could choose to invest, buy a new cell phone, or simply save for a rainy day. But what if you spent more than you earned? If that's the case, it's time to cut back on your expenses and balance your budget. You may also need to find a way to increase your income. Remember, everyone's budget is unique and it will fluctuate from month to month. So use a budget and be mindful of your daily expenses. That way you can make sure you're spending your money on things that really matter to you. When you budget, you decide where your money goes instead of wondering where it all went. And there you have it, the basics of a budget. Now it's time to create your own. Go to studentaid.gov/budget to get started.
Alrighty, so of course, note that down. You can go to studentaid.gov/budget to actually get started into the habits of budgeting. I know budgeting tends to become more of a mental thing, something that you sort of do in your head, but budgeting is actually very important that you sort of put a pen to paper so that you can get a broad overview of what your expenses and your income look like. So to sort of recap, if you want a more dictionary definition of what a budget is for your notes, a budget is a spending plan for managing money during a given period of time. And I'm sure that's very conventional wisdom for you all, but I think it's very important to sort of note that down and be aware of what a budget is. And more than that, the two essential components of a budget is income, which is the money you earned or received. In fact, gifts, so like money as gifts, also apply towards your income. And then also expenses, money spent to buy or to pay for essentials. So of course, the overarching goal is to always keep in mind of income and expenses. So what are some things to keep in mind when budgeting? When you budget, which should be higher, your expenses or your income? And you can quickly write that down in the chat. Yep, perfect. Everyone got it right. So of course your income should be higher. If your expenses are higher, then of course you'll be at a tough spot. But you know, that being said, if your expenses were too high, what might you do to cut back in order to save? So of course this one, there's no right or wrong answers, but I'm curious to see what are some things that you may do in order to make sure that your income stays balanced with your expenses or lower so that you do have enough money to save. Spend less on wants. Okay, Marielle, that's great. Not spend too much money on the wants. Okay, perfect. Less Starbucks. Perfect. Couldn't agree with you more. Finding another source of income. Okay, I see. So it's more so like, okay, I have these wants. Let me work harder to make more money. I honestly really like that mindset. But yeah, no, there are really many reasonable answers to this, such as not eating out as much, not enough, maybe not as much Starbucks anymore, or finding entertainment that is free. Maybe you're gonna cut off that Netflix subscription, hopefully not. But yeah, there's really many ways and many reasonable answers to this. And in fact, you guys will actually sort of put this into action when we try to do a small budgeting activity at the end of this presentation. So yeah, we've talked about wants and needs, and I saw in the chat that you guys all had a pretty good understanding of what wants and needs are. So I definitely did want to outline that for you. So, you know, when you're spending money, you definitely want to prioritize your needs, but you also don't want to confuse some of your wants as your needs. Entertainment is a want, but you might think of it as a need because you just cannot, you know, live without it. But you know, you need to make sure that you note down all the essential expenses that you have to have in order to live. And that, of course, is mortgage or rent. So shelter, food, clothing, electricity, and car payments. I would say, you know, making sure you're under a shelter, making sure that, you know, you're eating, you're covered. And then of course you have a functional home, you have electricity, and you also have a way to transport from A to B. So these are known as needs that you must you know, have to include in your life, especially when you're creating a budget. So, you know, not to confuse that with wants. So wants are non-essential expenses that you don't have to have in order to live. So these are movies, video games, high-end clothing, other items you want but you don't need. So of course, really, things like Netflix are just really high profile, high-end clothing is not really a want. Yes, clothing is a need. Clothing for, of course, for you to, you know, go out and be in public, of course. But that is one, you know, that is one way to really distinguish yourselves, distinguish certain items as needs and wants. So now let's sort of have an open-ended discussion. You know, have you ever wanted something but didn't have enough money to buy it? And if so, what did you do? Complain to my mom. Right, so there's many possible answers to this. You can save up money to buy it. You can decide not to buy something. You can find a cheaper alternative. Yes, saving more money or not buying it, perfect. And then another question is, you know, what do you think the consequences would be if you started to spend more money than you earn? And of course, as we mentioned before, you would have to owe money to others. You would be in debt. And maybe you won't have money in case of an emergency if there are in regard to consequences when you spend more money than you earn. And then, you know, let's think of it in a broad perspective. You know, why do you think many individuals, families, cities, states, and even countries have so much trouble with managing money wisely? And really, the answer to that is that it can be hard to resist spending money on something you want. And it takes work to plan ahead. And that's why, you know, in many situations when it comes to, you know, even countries and not even just individuals, there's always things that you want more than, you know, what you really need. And, you know, that kind of, you know, goes into the next question is, you know, what do you think are strategies to prevent this from happening? And, you know, kind of as we discussed before, you know, you always want to make sure that you know how much money you have and how much you're earning. Don't buy anything, you know, without thinking about it first, and think about whether you really need things that you really need the things that you buy. Make sure to prioritize your needs and wants first. So without further ado, we did talk about expenses and of course income that comes in, but we really do want to keep focus on expenses. So what are some common expenses, you know, people have in their day-to-day lives? And these were mentioned before, but definitely want to see what you say in the chat. What are some day-to-day expenses? Mortgages and bills, rent, gas money, food. Yeah, perfect. So you guys are all on the right track. There's food, groceries, rent or mortgage payments, electricity and heat, car payments, all along those lines. But then the question is, are these expenses the same amount consistently, or are they different? So, you know, another way to phrase that is that, is the amount of money you spend on groceries the same every month, or do they vary? They're different. They definitely vary. Yes. So it actually depends. They can all be different. Some of the expenses can actually be the same. So that being said, I did want to introduce to you the 3 types of expenses, and that is fixed expenses, variable expenses, and periodic expenses. Periodic expenses aren't really that common, but I did want to deep dive into that. So what do you think fixed expenses are? Fixed expenses are expenses that do not change from month to month. So examples of fixed expenses include rent, car payments, insurance, subscriptions, and many things like that. So of course, fixed payments are basically money that you do not, you know, that basically stay the same. So then that leads into the second type of expense, which are variable expenses. And these are expenses that vary from month to month. So examples of these are entertainment, movies, shows, you know, groceries, electricity and heat, and water, personal care and hygiene products. So, you know, just to kind of gain additional color in variable expenses, you know, you may be thinking electricity and heat and water, they're bills that we pay every month. Well, it also depends on how much electricity we use, how much water we use. And then the same goes for groceries and entertainment and even personal care and hygiene products. You know, groceries are really dependent on our needs for the month. Sometimes we get less groceries than usual because maybe the previous month we got more than what we needed. And of course, entertainment, you don't have to go on a movie every weekend or watch a show every single day. It really depends on you. So variable expenses are honestly really dependent on you. So then it goes into periodic expenses. And these are expenses that occur on an irregular basis rather than monthly. And periodic expenses are in fact one of the main reasons why we save and why we urge to have an emergency fund. And, you know, examples of periodic expenses are car repairs, doctor's bills, sudden emergencies, automobile maintenance costs, and even clothing sometimes. You may be wondering, why is clothing a periodic expense? Well, you don't buy clothes every single month. Sometimes you buy clothes one time and you use those set of clothes for, you know, a really long period of time. So clothing really is a periodic expense, but it is one of those periodic expenses that are needs that you need to, you know, keep in mind throughout the rest of your life. But, you know, that being said, we are almost done with our presentation. We covered all the different types of expenses and what it means to, you know, what is included in a budget. But I did want to take, you know, a couple minutes of your time to kind of put you into action and see if you can create a budget. So at this time, I would like if you guys can maybe take out a sheet of paper or a calculator, or maybe a Word doc and a mobile calculator, and try to create your own monthly budget. So here are some of the rules. Okay, so the average median salary. So this is the average salary in the US. A monthly salary is $3,500. Of course, not everyone. Many people may have a lower salary than that, or many people may have a higher salary than that, but this is the average roughly. This is the average monthly salary. You've just moved into a new home and you're paying rent. So think about how much you're going to spend on essential categories of costs and spending, such as rent, food, car payments, clothing, and entertainment. Anything that you think that when you first move into your first apartment or first house or whatever it is, what are you gonna pay for to make sure that you're settled, in the first month of your independency. And also keep in mind, what are some expenses that are fixed, variable, or periodic? So I know you may be wondering, I do not know how to create a budget. What does that even look like? So I'm happy to provide a very, basic and foundational template, which is your income, your expenses, and your total income, and basically your total remaining money at the end. So let's take a couple minutes to sort of figure out what does a budget look like? So I know we're almost reaching the 5 o'clock mark, and I definitely don't want you all to, stay overboard on this presentation. But I definitely would, suggest that you take a picture of this outline, and I'll actually show you an outline that I made with the budget. So by the way, is everyone good to go with that? You can say in the chat or maybe do like a thumbs up. Definitely want to be respectful of all your guys' time. All right, perfect. So, this is the budget that was created based on a $3,700 monthly median salary. But here is how I actually organized it into a budget. So there is a monthly paycheck of $3,300. The savings, I made sure that I paid myself first. That was the first bill I paid, which was $330. I employed the 10% rule. And then this was the total income that I had. Now I had to figure out, what are the different types of expenses that I need to make sure is within my budget. So definitely you guys can all take a picture of this and, keep in mind how I made sure that I included rent. That's a fixed cost. That's $1,078 a month. And by the way, all these amounts I did not make up. I actually looked up the average amount that a single person spends. And then as you can see, when you take account into your needs and not so much of your wants, you really do end up having total money remaining at the end, even if you set aside money before you even paid for your bills. But definitely, I know for time's sake, I definitely would have loved if you all could do the activity with me, but I definitely want to be respectful of all you guys' time. But highly suggest if you guys could take a picture of this, as this will serve as a basic outline of what a budget will look like. And I also urge you all to also look up certain types of budget sheets and budgeting activities that you guys may practice, so that when you transition to independency, you're at a better start. So yeah, that being said, I did want to review all the key concepts that we talked about today. We talked about personal finances, planning for the future. We talked about savings, how savings is basically the biggest foundational thing in making sure that you're financially fit for your future. We talked about budgeting. and you know, how budgeting is a very important aspect in making sure that you are planning wisely for yourself. We talked about wants versus needs, and we talked about fixed and variable and periodic expenses. Yasmin, I see that you have a question. You said, why are electricity bill and water bill a variable expense? That is because because a variable means it's dependent on how much you use it. Same thing with groceries. It depends on how much groceries that you buy. A rent is a fixed cost because that's a fixed amount that you have to pay every month. But water and electricity bill, it depends on how much electricity you use and how much water you use every single month. So 1 month you can use X amount of gallons of water and maybe your bill is $70, and then the next month you don't use water as much, so your bill is actually $40 or $30. So does that make sense to answer your question on why electricity bills and water bills are variable and not fixed? Perfect, perfect. All right, so I did want to wrap up with also giving you guys some mobile budget apps that you guys can use throughout your life. There's Social Finance, Left to Spend, Mint also does savings and budgeting. There's YNAB and My Budget Book. So definitely I would suggest that you all take a picture of this as well. And yes, Mr. Lucas, don't forget the phone bill as well, definitely. Phone bills can be something that you can also employ in your budget, especially when you're starting to live in independency as we all transition into college. But that being said, I really appreciate all of your guys' attendance today. It really means a lot, especially this being the first session of this year-long series. But, you know, I really did want to get your feedback on, you know, how you think the session went. You know, how can we be better next time? What topics would you like to see in the future? And of course, I know many of you who may be watching this may be passionate about presenting a workshop in the future. Maybe one of you knows someone that has done workshops on resume building or anything like that. So really, you know, Key Club is all about sharing and community. So I really want to make sure that you all, you know, note down in our survey below of anyone that you may know that could be a future presenter. I would love to see other people teach you all on all the essential aspects that you all want to learn. But Angela did put the survey link in the chat. I would really appreciate if you could take a couple minutes to fill out the survey before we end off the session. So yeah, the meeting link was given in the chat, bit.ly. And yeah, really, if you do know anyone who would like to present a workshop in the future or know someone who could, you can email me at treasurer@floridakeyclub.org. And I'd really appreciate if you all could, you know, fill out the survey below before you leave. But other than that, you know, thank you all for your time. And I really hope that this information was helpful, and it really, you know, basically created a spark in yourselves to start kind of delving deep into the financial world and how you can make sure that you're financially fit for the future. But other than that, I will close this session down in a couple minutes. I know many of you guys may be completing the surveys, but once you do complete the survey, you feel free to leave. And you know, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend. And you know, definitely, if you have any questions, please email me at treasurer@floridakeyclub.org. And these can be any type of questions, even if it has anything to do with dues, the FLOF application, which is a service grant that we give for your service projects, as well as any financial literacy questions that you may have. So yeah, I'll have my slide open here in case you all are filling out the survey. But other than that, thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all again in the coming months.